Well, and I love that it's not just the broken that need this, but how can I use my strengths better? Everything can be made better, no matter how good your work life is, how good your home life is.
Yeah.
Somebody just walking you through that can make a good better.
This is Brent Richardson, and welcome to the Business Minutia Podcast, where our focus is on the details of business that are often passed over by traditional classes and leadership training. We focus on the stories of real people who have tried, failed, and learned through their experiences and are willing to share their lessons with others. Okay, Jamie, so we're going to talk about work-life balance. And wouldn't it be better for me to just talk about...
Absolutely not.
Well, I'm a master of work-life balance.
No, absolutely
I'm not. How can you tell when I'm not mastering work-life balance?
When you are manager at home instead of husband and father?
Yeah. I suspect the opposite is true, too. When things are out of balance at home, I'm pretty sure most of previous bosses
Things are never
I've
out
had,
of balance at home, Brent.
They definitely are. I have a teenage daughter. That's all I'll say. And I'm sure there are bosses that I've had in the past who would tell you,
newborn phase.
Something's going on
yeah.
here. Yeah, there's things in our lives that affect us, and we can stick our head in the sand and act like they don't. But the reality is that they do, right?
Right, and that's what I loved about this episode is it's talking about work-life balance, but it's attacking the life end of it rather than just the work end of it.
It's a different perspective. I would have never imagined bringing a pastor onto my podcast because it's a corporate focus and or at least corporate and entrepreneurs, and so that wouldn't have ever been the plan. But when I sat and listened and talked with Michael about what he was doing in terms of working with corporations and engaging them as a chaplain and listening, kind of being a third party to listen, I was like, wow, this is a really interesting perspective for people to listen to.
Well, and Michael is way more than just a pastor. I mean, he's owned a small business, started a small business, failed at a small business.
Yeah.
He has worked at major nonprofits as well as leading a church.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's we've kind of gone opposite directions. Like I've gone from the ministry area into the corporate environment, into small town, into big city, and he's gone from big city into the exact same small town that I started in. So
small town.
We've kind of been, and we were good friends before all that.
Right.
So it is kind of a weird small world story, but interesting perspective for people to think about. I really would challenge people to listen to this and think about if you can be authentic and true to yourself about whether you really have your balance right. If you're really honest, there's probably some things that you can learn and grow from as you listen to this.
Absolutely. I think we all can.
Yeah. Please welcome Michael Fleming.
A lot of us in the corporate world and in life, we have it all planned out. Here's my 10 years plan and my 5-year goals. But when life throws you a curve, how do you handle that?
Right.
And so began seeking that out and was led to an organization called Marketplace Chaplains. And so we are chaplains that go into the corporate world and provide care for the employees. And we found that most employees don't have a relationship in their life based on trust or any kind of confidence that person is not going to manipulate or use the information shared against them. And what our chaplaincy does is fully confidential, but just goes in there and relationally builds relationship. And through that, when crisis comes, we're able to kind of walk people through some of their darkest days, and with no agenda, no reporting, it's truly 100% confidential, and we're there to help people through those days.
When we were talking about this initially, that's the part that lit a spark in me. Is like, wow, that's so you have an outside perspective on things that can go wrong, and these are areas that we don't talk about in the corporate world that are neglected, and that's why I thought, okay, I think this is a really interesting conversation to have for people to, because I think folks listening will be able to relate to it. And they'll be able to relate to the fact that, I don't talk about that in the workplace.
Yeah.
And yet it dictates and affects work. Like I've seen it so many times leading people that, it is a part of what I have to do is unpacking these kind of challenges and problems that people run into.
Well, what we find is people think I'm the only one dealing with this, so there's something wrong with me. Right. When in actuality, every person you see walking down that hallway has something.
Right. And
if that something isn't kind of dealt with, it does begin to affect how I think, how I act, how I talk, my productivity. And so if we can help people win personally, then naturally the company, all that stuff happens.
Sure. Right.
But in some regard, you have to deal with those things on a personal level.
So you mentioned death. Those are obvious cases. Business failures. Again, what are some other cases where you've seen challenges or problems negatively affecting someone's productivity at work that you've observed?
Well, I think of one particular instance, a VP climbed the ladder, doing well, advancing. His work was just through the roof. But in 1 2-week period, he lost a grandmother who was really like a mom, a caregiver, and super close, just devastated him. The day after that, his daughter had twins prematurely in the hospital fighting for their life. And this guy in the hallway, hey, how's everything going? Just immediately breaks down. Mm-hmm. We step into an office because he doesn't want anybody to see that he's broken and hurting. And tears running down his face. And so we're just talking through and just processing all that. He knows what to say for everybody else, but for his own life, just this moment of, I've been so tough. I got to be tough for my family. I got to be tough for the office, but just broken.
Sure.
And talking through that, and I was able to, maybe nobody else in the building knew that. I was able to go to the funeral and just relationally, just somebody to share that with that has no ulterior motive or agenda that would use that against them. Sure. And so we talked and processed and continued that conversation. I don't know that I had great wisdom there, but just a voice to talk to. Sure. And get that out and feel safe. Safe conversation meant so much to him. And then we walked through the hospital visits. We do all that and funerals and there for him as a person that was just there to care. Yeah. Helped him through a dark day. So in that regard, neither one of those incidences were planned. A guy who's planned his whole career and advanced, but death and a challenging situation physically just completely devastated him.
Sure. I've seen a lot of cases with divorce as well.
Yes.
Where there's relationship failure that takes place. And you can tell there's something going on, right? As a leader or manager of an organization, you're looking and seeing that, okay, I can tell something's off. Performance is starting to have an effect.
Yeah.
There's something going on here, right? And it's not my place to go provoke and gather that. But eventually, if you have, good conversations and connection with people. But again, it's different when it's the boss, right?
Yeah.
Having a third party, and you'll have human resources available and things like that. But again, do they really have your best interest, or are they looking out to protect the company, right? Those are always the challenges that I think that we face when we think about those things. So having a third party available so it's interesting. I want to unpack a little bit more about observations that you've had. Anything outside of the divorce, and you get divorced, you got a death in the family. Any other cases? Are interesting?
Yeah, a lot of health issues, marriage, kids. Just an unexpected crisis that, so in our place, we visit places every week, building a relationship. And so it's out of relationship, not out of, maybe come sit on my couch and unpack everything.
Right.
Just,
you already know these
we've already
folks.
built it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're already coming in and saying,
so,
I'm here.
So we even can recognize, almost like what you said, we can recognize like, man, something's different about you right now. It's something going on, and just some leading questions. But yeah, stress is really big right now. Just health, marriage, kids, a lot of those finances, caring for aging parents or kids, or the unexpected finance thing, and then that's causing that they just carry that stress. And studies out there on how stress affects us, and ultimately it's going to affect. You can hide it as best you can, but ultimately those personal issues come out, whether that's a short fuse or just productivity. And so if we can find that healthy balance and be healthy personally, then ultimately, on a corporate side, that work productivity is going to go up.
Right. Is this chaplain concept, is this a growing trend?
Yeah, it really is. I joined 5 years ago. Our company's been doing this for 20 plus years, and there are a number of other groups out there that are doing it. I had never heard of it. and just been amazed at the growth and the care that's been given, and really the need that's out there. To have somebody third party that has no agenda, no ties. In our particular situation, we report our time, we report, the people, how many people we saw, that kind of thing. But any issues, none of that leaves. In fact, I'm required for confidentiality, and so I can't break it unless there's a couple of reasons, child abuse and those kind of the law things.
Right.
But to have that completely confidential and relational, somebody that cares.
Yeah.
We just even in some friendships out there, there's always maybe an agenda. There's always somebody that's got an ulterior motive or something going on. And so to have a service that really 100% truthfully is just there to help you balance life has been so vital.
Yeah, I'd say for myself personally, that's something I had to learn early on, is the value and the power of having good mentors and advisors is really, really beneficial. I learned the hard way. And those folks can't be necessarily the people that you think they are. You would think, oh, it's just my friends here in the office. And well, they have an agenda.
Yep.
They do. And it's painful to learn that the hard way when you realize, oh, man, they were not giving me wise counsel. They were giving me counsel that very much benefited them. Right? Yeah. And so having somebody outside, and then over time, just getting an outsider perspective on what we do has been a beneficial thing.
And I think there's so many tools today that are great. This podcast, books, there's great stuff out there. But I think that it goes beyond that, because I can get the material and I can learn the concepts and I can get great leadership quotes and all that, Twitter worthy. But to have somebody relationally know me and speak into that situation, and just a place where I can unload and unpack it, it goes to a whole nother level.
Sure, absolutely. What kind of results do you guys have? Do you have cases where you're observing the impact of what you're doing?
Yeah, our company does a lot of, we sit down with the ownership, and so we can track the difference that this makes as far as productivity, but just seeing individually somebody struggling and getting through that, and really just learning that balance, because it's going to happen. I don't care if you're the president or the bottom level. Those curves that life throws, you're not prepared for.
Yeah, I would say, like, the higher up you are, the harder it is to do this, because you feel like you can't be as transparent, right? I've observed that looking at some of the senior folks that we have that go through challenges, and that challenge exists at the top levels. We've had this, and it's tough. Like, you have to find ways to go get this cleaned up for yourself.
And even sitting in owners in the offices of the owners of these huge corporations, but the wife had a terrible diagnosis. Another one, just some very difficult marriage issues, and both husband and wife are in leadership of the company. Man, they talk about how to navigate that. The employees are picking up some tension, but how do you walk through that? And so, that's multiple levels of strife.
So I'm a person out there listening, and I'm dealing with trauma in my life. I've got some crazy things going on. I don't talk to people in the workplace. I'm still chasing the next rung on the ladder, and the activity that I'm these are competitive folks we're talking about. They've got a lot of drive, and they're tenaciously chasing down a specific thing. What does a healthy work-life balance look like for them based on what you've observed?
Yeah, I think continuing to grow in all those areas. So the resources, the podcast, the books, understanding marriage, and a lot of times I'll sit down with guys struggling with marriage, and they'll feel like I'm the only one in the world struggling like this, or this is a Sue problem or Nancy problem. What's wrong with her? And I'm like, bro, this is just a male and female problem. We all have these issues. I don't care. The best marriage in the world is going to have those days of struggles, because men and women are so different. And so one thing to realize is we all have these struggles. None of us are immune. And so to seek out some type of help, some type of relationship where I can realize, okay, I'm not the only one, and somebody has gone through this and can help me walk those steps. And just that balance of just being healthy in all these areas. As you climb the ladder and the workload and the stress, there's got to be an avenue for stress relief. There's got to be relational experiences that can help balance all that out. It can't be, the RPMs can't be raging every moment of the day. We recognize that in the cars, but to realize I've got to have some healthy aspects of my life, relationally or physically or whatever it is, to help balance all this out.
Yeah. There's what's the famous saying? Know thyself. I think we talk about emotional intelligence a lot. We're really talking about self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think the more aware you are of yourself and recognizing your own challenges and limitations, so that you can be sensitive when things are off. Right? I've had people ask me, how do you know when you're overloaded or stressed? And I personally, over time, have learned that I'll get a twitch in like my eye, where stress starts to amp up too much, and then I'll be like, okay, I need to make some changes. I need to get on the mountain bike for a little while or something. I need to find these mechanisms that will help me relieve stress. Right? When things go out of whack at home and I've got some chaos that's taking place there, it's better for me to find ways to go articulate that to my boss. I know sometimes I don't want to do that, or just take a couple of days off and say, hey, I need to go sort some things out.
Yeah.
Right. This needs to take place.
And I think that's an important key of, you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
If the check engine light is on, you got to do something. It's not just going away.
Right.
And when some of those sensors in our lives are showing up, to deal with it, whether that's a counselor, whether that's just a relationship with somebody, to talk it out, or you mentioned a situation at home, not to immerse and we see this, not to, okay, I'm just going to work a lot more. It's still, the situation is still the same at home. And if I don't have the tools of how to deal with that, I've got to find those, because that has to be dealt with before I can continue down the path I'm at. So a lot of people avoid confrontation, avoid dealing with issues, but if they're unresolved, they don't go away.
No, it just gets worse.
It just gets worse, and then it affects everything.
It does, and I've almost lost some really, really good employees that were dealing with divorce or major trauma, and then trying to just power through it. And then they eventually are like, hey, I can't handle this job. I can't do this. I'm like, yeah, you can. If we could partner and work together, there's no reason you have to work 70-hour weeks and leave your family. That's not the objective here. That's not the work-life balance that needs to take place. But if you stick your head in the sand and you're out there by yourself on an island, everything starts to look real dreary and impossible to solve.
Yeah.
Right? So getting out of that.
And I know we've talked about, in the corporate world, it's kind of like, hey, take 2 days off and come back different.
Yeah. Magic should happen.
Yeah. It'll fix everything.
You get time off. You should come back ready to go.
And you think about a sickness, you go to the doctor, unless you use what he gives you or unless you do what he says, just going to the doctor doesn't fix it. And so, there's got to be some tools and some help that we get in those areas.
Yeah. Are those the initial steps? Are there other initial steps somebody could take that's out there listening? What are those first steps that they can take to move in that direction?
I think just a conversation, just an honest conversation of recognizing the issues I'm facing, acknowledging the problem is first step, talking it through. And then, it may be a next step of seeking out a counselor. We refer when I can't help somebody because I'm not a professional counselor. We have all kinds of others that we recommend to, and there's nothing wrong. Man, I say that all the time. Seek out the help you need, and I think we're doing better as a society when it comes to counseling and getting therapy and so forth. We have progressed in that, but there's still a little bit of a stigma on that. We have, just for a personal story, we've adopted 2 kids. And so with the adoption came a family therapist. And I now recommend every family to have a family therapist. Yeah. There are so many things that she picks up on. Like, I'm around these kids all day, and she's there for like 20 minutes, and she points out things that I never saw. And it's been great for my biological kids. It's been great for my marriage just to have somebody that just sees it differently and can speak into it. And then she'll say, hey, try doing this. And you're like, oh man, I've been a parent, 16 years and never thought about it. I just do it my way. Until somebody gives me a different perspective.
Right.
And that's helped us.
Yeah. What is the Mafia series that was out on HBO years ago? That was like this big hit. I cannot.
The Sopranos.
The Sopranos.
Okay.
Yeah. The Sopranos is where I started thinking about this years ago. Watching, I see he's going to see a counselor, and I'm through the show. You're watching him learn through the counseling about himself.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I want to do that.
Right?
I'm going to be a way better leader.
Sure.
If I can understand my own limitations. And so I think that's where I was like, this counseling thing, because I even grew up with kind of a negative stigma.
Right.
Yeah, those people who are broken go do that. Right.
Sure.
When in reality, I remember after watching that, like, oh man, I think that would be really good to understand myself better. Because I think the more you have that emotional intelligence, the better at your job you're going to be, the better you're going to understand where your boundaries are. You also appreciate diversity more.
Yeah,
I found is when I understand, here's where my strengths and here my gaps are.
Yeah.
Then you start to look where you can fill those gaps in. Like, I'm going to need to surround myself who are strong in these areas because I'm not that person.
Yeah.
And bringing those people in has helped.
Well, and I love that it's not just the broken that need this, but how can I use my strengths better? How can everything can be made better, no matter how good your work life is, how good your home life is.
Yeah.
Somebody just walking you through that can make a good better, and so I'm a better leader. I process better. I think differently when I have these conversations, and it doesn't have to just be with a counselor. Just us hanging out this week, spending time together and talking through how's life, and but it takes us both being real and honest.
Yeah.
And it also takes a relationship. I trust you, you trust me. I can share with you anything and know that's not going to come back and hurt me.
Right.
But many don't have that type of relationship. They've had to seclude themselves from that to, corporately.
Well, it takes a lot of time to build that.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Yeah, which is good because you got counselors available that you can go day one and have something there, right?
Sure.
So that's something to tap into. But then over time, you want to go kind of build those kinds of relationships. Those are good too, right? But,
well, and you've got to have that because, like I said, most of the situations I deal with are crisis situations that we're never planned or prepared for. So if you don't have that in your life, it's a 100% chance there's going to be a crisis in your life at some point.
Sure.
And if you haven't spent the time and built the relational equity with someone, a relationship, and maybe outside of your work life, or a counselor or something, it's like you build that now so that it can help you later.
Yeah, and I think we tell ourselves stories as well. And so in isolation, I observed this earlier this year when we had a tragedy in our family, and you were a part of that activity in terms of helping with the healing process. But I lost my brother-in-law this year, and it was surprising, shocking, just out of nowhere. Young guy, just it's my fishing partner, so that kind of blew us all away. And I think in isolation, you can start to tell yourself horror stories, and you can start to tell yourself crazy things about what you should do in life, and like how I'm just going to quit and I'm just going to go move to the mountains, or that wasn't the case, but whatever, you start to tell yourself crazy stories. Yeah. And then the more, is this life even matter? This type of thing. But being surrounded by people that you're talking about, people that you have in your community and the people that you have relationships with, it allows you to kind of calibrate yourself and be like, okay, because the stories that you tell in your head are not necessarily healthy. Right.
In these moments of crisis, I'm very emotional and I'm not thinking right.
Correct.
And so, I've seen people make,
sell everything and we're going to move to Malaysia.
I'm never leaving my family again. Well, I can't feed them now.
Correct.
And so you got to process that even in crisis of how to walk through that.
One of the interesting things that I learned and observed when they talk about work-life balance, I thought early in my career that was, okay, you have work and then you have life. And I got to balance those two, but they're completely separate. Somewhere along the way, I realized when I merge these things, it's better for me. I found myself, it's almost like when you're younger and you have this group of friends and that group of friends, but you don't want them around each other. You don't want them, you don't want to mix those companies together. When I got to a point where I stopped doing that, I said, let's melting pot this thing. Yeah. Let's just merge it all the same. oh man, that was so freeing for me to just say, this is who I am all the time.
Yeah.
And I just get to be that way. How do you balance? Do you observe that with people who can merge those things together, have a healthier work-life
because you
balance?
can't turn that off.
Yeah.
And if work is struggling, home is going to struggle, and if home is struggling, then then work. So it's merging those things. It's who you are, and you can't be one guy for 10 hours a day and another guy for the other 14. And so merging those and just being healthy and understanding who you are makes all the difference. And not, I mean, you can hide those things and push them down, but they're gonna come out.
Right.
Either at home, we've seen it both ways. Either the business stress affects the home and nobody wants to be around dad or mom, or the home life begins to affect the work life. And so figuring out the balance of those two things and keeping both parts of that life healthy does make all the difference.
Yeah. When I could start to let people that I worked with in on my life outside of work, it started to become easier for me to balance it. I don't know why, but that became an easier. I can't put my finger on how that made a difference. I could organically be the same person all the time, which helped. And then I felt I was more organic in terms of leadership, corporate as well as I would just have people over for dinner.
Yeah.
Right. Just connecting with people.
We're social beings. I mean, we've got to have that. And whether, in the corporate world, if you've shut that all off, that's going to be a rough day every day. Yeah. If you have nobody that, you can go to a ball game with or have some coffee with, just being you and being real. And that sets you up for the times when you need a true friend, a true person to walk through life with.
Sure. Are there people that this is a more controversial question? Are there people that you see a consistent trend that are using your services, men versus women, upper management, lower management, and or is it across?
Yeah.
The board?
So there are people that I walk in from day one. So it's always interesting when our third-party service comes in and the employees are all told, okay, you got some chaplains here, and there's some pushback. That's natural. Like, okay, I don't believe this is true.
Here come the consultants.
Management are gonna, know all about my issues, and there are some people that from the get-go are like unfold their entire life in the first 5-minute conversation, and then what I found is there are others that will push back until there is that situation. And so there have been several instances where somebody outside of, hey, how are you doing? How's life going? Good. All right, man, have a great day. That's the extent of our conversation until something happens. And then knowing that they have somebody to call on. I've seen it in one particular employee. There was a suicide. One of the employees committed suicide at this location. And just devastate. I mean, these guys work with him all day long, and then there's a little bit of remorse. Why didn't I see his struggles? Why didn't I pick up on that? And so walking that employee who had been a little standoffish, but me showing up, hours after it happened, and just, this tough guy just bawling, walking them with the funeral. We now have a bond. And now the door is wide open. And so, there are people that respond differently, not knowing how to use a service like this. It's so foreign to them in the corporate world. And some people just, they just don't have many social outlets. And so how to navigate that. So I would say it's more personality driven than male or female, top level, lower level. Really, it's if the need is there and relationally. Some people are too busy at work, because for our organization, we visit at the workplace. And so we recognize you're going to have meetings, you're going to have phone calls, there are stressful times, and you don't have time to just put everything aside and talk. And then there's other times when we catch you at a great moment and you're able to talk. So it deals more with the business and what's going on and the personality, because some of my best conversations are with VPs and then the hourly bottom level type employee, it all in between.
Yeah. So similar, like slightly off topic, but I think it does relate over to it. We talk quite a bit about millennials and younger generation in the corporate space compared to Gen Xers and Boomers that are on the senior. I guess I'm borderline on the Gen X side, but I lead and work with a lot of younger folks, and I can detect. There can definitely see culture differences between the generations,
Sure.
and how have you observed that from this perspective of from counseling or helping folks out in this way?
Yeah. Again, I think the personalities are different, but I feel like the millennials are a little more open relationally. A little more social is a big part of their lives, and wanting to have a little fun at work, have a little fun at home. They tend to be a little more open to that. Maybe our generation and up is business. We got to focus, we got to get it done, and so we don't separate those things too well.
Right.
So yeah, age may factor in a little bit at that. But again, crisis is going to come no matter your age or experience or level in a company, and those unforeseen challenges will come. And
yeah, what I observe so far, at least, is that the younger generation is more accepting of, like you said, more willing and accepting of the concept of counseling.
Yeah,
they're more open to merge their work and life together. But that's a very large generalization. We also have folks, again, I think you're right, when it comes to personality, I've also observed folks that that's all, what's the old joke about what's the difference between an introverted engineer and an extroverted engineer, and the extroverted engineer looks at your shoes. We have plenty of folks who are not going to take their eyes off their shoes.
Sure.
And those folks are still going to struggle
right.
To get their head out of the sand and, have that emotional intelligence. I've also seen extremely introverted engineers with high levels of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
They just don't want to talk about it.
Right.
But it's
right.
there, right? So that's interesting as well. Whereas I think the stigma with the older folks is still there about, this guy needs to go see a shrink or something.
You're right.
Like that,
No,
right?
and that definitely is there. There's a different viewpoint with, I think, the younger generations of counseling could just help me exceed my limitations, whereas older, and I think it's changing, but older people will see it as, there's something wrong with me if I go to a counselor.
Defense versus
I'm broken.
offense.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of playing offense.
Definitely.
I like instead of just being defensive postures, but playing offense is the key to corporate success.
Definitely.
In my opinion, and so that's when I first saw that the show with the Sopranos, you can play offense with this counseling concept. That's actually a pretty good idea. So maybe somebody out there gets inspired by it. Go see a counselor, see if they can unpack your strengths and weaknesses, and then really accentuate those strengths.
Yeah,
spend time getting better at those. Right, I think I'm still in this from another leadership instructor. I'm not sure which one, but folks that I've heard and I've adhered to for years is, if you can get better in some of your strengths, but on a 10 scale, you might get 1 or 2 points better. So if you're a 6 or a 7, you might become a 9, and that will be very impactful.
Sure.
And if you're a 2 at something and you become a 4, nobody cares.
Right.
It's you're still going to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs, and so if you can understand, understanding where those strengths and weaknesses are is really an emotional intelligence game.
Right.
The more you can unpack and
recognizing and being willing to do something about it. And I love the Soprano illustration because he is the top dog, and if this man's man, because sometimes men, I would venture to say maybe men struggle with the counseling aspect more than women,
right?
Because we don't want to show weakness, But here, Soprano is a great illustration of a man's man at the top, but still recognizing, man, if I'm going to balance all this and I'm going to thrive, I've reached the top, but to stay there, I've got to get some more tools, some more help to keep this balance, or it's going to crumble.
Sure.
And we've all seen things build, but without that foundation, it does crumble. And so I want to build on a strong foundation so that I can keep climbing, keep being successful, keep being all that I want to be. So
right. Yeah. I haven't done it, but I definitely. I think because I'm surrounded by counselors.
Yeah.
I just have too many people in my network that are that way. But I still think it would be valuable to do and kind of unpack your.
Well,
you're
and
gonna
even
learn something for sure.
And I know we've used the word counseling. I'm not a counselor.
Right.
I'm a chaplain, so there's a little bit of religious undertones there, but we don't. I'm not walking in with a Bible. In fact, we've even moved away from my badge. It doesn't even say chaplain; it just says marketplace care. So more of a care business model. Right. And so for you, I don't see counseling, and there may become a time when you need it, but you've surrounded yourself with people you can be real honest with. And one thing about you will be real and honest. You don't put on the fluff and stuff. You have enough of those people, I think, in every network that you're in, whether it's in the nonprofit world that we're in, if it's in the corporate world, you have some family, friends where you can go and just unload and be real. But there are a lot of people that don't have that.
Sure.
And so even if it's just, I would say, to have a friend, you have to be a friend. It may be that you begin by building these relationships and friendships so that you do have somebody that does care in your life.
Sure. Mike, you have pastored and counseled people for more than 20 years. Why get involved in this corporate aspect of things?
Yeah, so the interesting change in my life was in the ministry circles, they come to you. In the corporate circles, I go to them. And there's a difference there because not everybody will seek it out. And so I'm able to take this care opportunity to the corporate world and the people. I'm sitting in their offices. I'm in offices that you wouldn't normally go into, but because an owner has brought this in to help health, he recognizes if I have healthy employees, then I have a healthy business. And so me just seeing that opportunity to go and to help people, that's all I do on the pastor side, but on the chaplain side, it's just about helping people. And I've been through, business failing, a loved one passing away. I've been through those things and recognizing, man, I needed people surrounding me in the midst of that. And like you said, not making some crazy decisions. I'm just going to run off and, head to an island somewhere and recognizing that I need that and I want to be that for others.
Maybe loosely related to the topic, but talk a little bit about the failure case. That's kind of what we opened with that's an example of a life challenge you went through. Is there anything more you can speak to that?
Yeah, so we opened a business in our small town. I'm a full-time pastor, and went in with a partner to open. It was a kind of little restaurant, a coffee shop, and yogurt back 5 years ago when the big yogurt trend was kicking off. And so we opened in our small town thinking, man, this is exactly what our town needs. It would be a great, we had all the goals, 5 year, multiple locations, and we just bombed. And man, when you deal with that, you're dealing with employee situations, you're dealing with, the financial aspect of it, and then just I guess I dealt with. I always thought I could do this successful. So you deal with the just personal rejection and the embarrassment, like, man, and then facing the feeling of I've let my family down, because now I've got this debt and they never asked for it. And so now I've got to navigate that. And I still have to do my full-time job. So I'm putting all these hats on and recognizing, man, even somebody that on paper looks successful, I faced some things that I had never been through, and I had to seek out others and get wisdom and navigate that because I'm drowning in debt, I'm drowning in responsibility, and my family still needs me to show up at the T-ball game, with a smile on my face and cheer my kid on. Right. And so recognizing all of that, I saw the need for, hey, everybody that looks like they have it together, they don't necessarily have it together, right. And you don't know what they're facing. Sure. And so that really led me to kind of seek out what else is out there to kind of help supplement. I had some, just practical. I had some debt I had to pay off, and so began to seek some things out, and through that, some doors opened where I saw the need of this walking through the corporate world and providing this care that I needed through the crisis I was in.
Sure. And what process how did you attack that? Like somebody else is out there listening right now, it's going through a similar thing.
So from what I did personally, or from the seeking out the chaplain?
How did you personally get through that and get to the point where, like, would you today, if you had a really great opportunity, go pursue it?
Yeah. So, you just put on the boots and get going. And one thing was dealing with it, having the conversation, just being real. I couldn't hide it. Obviously the business opened in town and all the publicity and local pastor doing something great for the town, and then the lights are out. So having those conversations, what it's also done is I think all of our life experiences are a resource and useful for us later on. And so to walk with, now I sit in businessmen's, owners, VPs offices, and recognize the financial strain. I understand that directly related to what happens here affects me personally. So I think it gave me the tools to help others. And then I recognized the need that I needed people in my life that could walk me through those trials and difficulties, and just to give me wisdom, because you think you know it all and you got the plan, and when it doesn't go according to plan, you need some new tools. You need some people to walk you through that.
Sure.
And there's always somebody that's been where you've been. There's always somebody, if you're mountain climbing, you got somebody that's ahead of you and you got somebody below you. And so I'm always seeking out somebody to help me, and then I always want to help somebody else, because that's really where the pain and the difficulty comes alive, is when I can use what I've learned to help somebody else. That's when it not to use a spiritual term, but that's when it gets redeemed. That's when it gets useful. It had a purpose. Sure. It wasn't just pain, but it served a purpose to help somebody else.
I don't think I've ever gone through a major life challenge that within the next few years I was guiding somebody else through the same
Definitely.
thing. Right. And what's the old saying? You can't take people or lead people through something
where you
haven't been, right? And so every time I would go through that, I'd have to stop and reflect and say, okay, I'm going through this because there's probably a case in the next couple of years where I'm going to have to guide. It goes through, losing our first child, before it was born, and, the trauma there. And then we went through the case with multiple other couples. Since then, there have been so many people you walk. So when you're dealing with those types of things, that's for a purpose.
Yeah,
I think
and you have the empathy that you wouldn't have had before.
For sure.
It's the old, if you start looking for a new car and you don't see them at all, and then you go and buy it, and now you see them everywhere. I remember a 16-year-old, no one had the car I got, and then all of a sudden I saw it everywhere. So I think through pain, we start seeing the pain around us.
Sure.
And then we know how, hey, I've been there, and I can give you hope because I've walked through that.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that we talk about in each of the episodes is, there's all these really great self-help leadership books and podcasts and content that's out there, right? But one of the things that from time to time they can have an effect on, I refer to it as motivational hangover. I can get this really great motivational sales pitch or a collection of axioms, but I have no idea how to apply it to my life.
It'll sell a good book.
It'll sell a good book, but I don't know how. It's not helping me present in this meeting next week where I know there's a guy that wants to yell at me. Yeah. Like, how do I get past that guy? That's what I'm trying to find out, right? So we that's the reason for the name of our podcast is we want to get into the minutiae. We want to get into that level of detail, because a lot of times when I coach and help people, there's usually like this one little nugget of information that once that is understood, the light bulb goes off and there's like I get it. I understand. What is that thing? In it can be on this specific on this topic, but if there's a separate thing, it's an interesting discussion as well. But what's that one thing if you were to go back in time and tell yourself the 25-year-old version of Michael Fleming? What's that thing that this little nugget of information would be life-changing for you?
Yeah, I think what's led me down this path is that understanding of, and if I could go back, I would tell myself, you've got to take care of yourself. The old, you're on the airplane and they tell you put on your mask before you put the mask on your others. It's so counter to what we would think. This person needs it. But if I'm not taking care of me, and I've been through some seasons of just absolute burnout, and what I've learned, I really am pretty fresh in the last year or two. Just I've got to take care of me. No one else will. No one else will care about how healthy I am. No one else will care about my marriage. That's something only I can take care of, and I've got to do it. I've got to do those things. And then if I'm healthy internally, then all these other areas are going to be healthy. But I can't turn that off. And so I would go back to myself and give me permission to have fun. Give me permission to, go on that mountain bike ride. Because I realize that hour is going to make the other 8 hours so much more productive. And we get to that mindset where I don't have time for that. And ultimately, if I'm burning at both ends, it's going to burn out. And so I knew it. I've read it, like you said, all the axioms, all the books, but practically I didn't understand it, or I didn't think that applied to me. That I didn't have time for that. And, but man, I being healthy and having fun, enjoying, this is the one life we've got. Yeah. And so to enjoy it, if you're miserable, man, find an outlet, find something that, you can make your life matter, and worthwhile, and enjoy the journey. Makes all the difference.
That's great. Yeah, I think if on the topic for myself personally, I would probably go back and encourage the younger version of me to not be fearful of merging your work community with your life community. Those communities can network together, and the more you can be the organic, real version of yourself, it's easier for those folks. And it can be messy at times. Community in general is messy, right? So it can be messy, but embrace that. And work hard. That's always been something that I do just because I'm competitive.
Right.
But celebrate.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of times in the corporate world, we just life in general, we're like on to the next thing.
Yeah. You finish one project, you start the next.
Yeah. And celebrate that project you were on. Learn to celebrate and appreciate and reflect on the successes that you've had, and set milestones up such that you can do that and celebrate. And I think that also has helped.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for the conversation. I think it's really helpful. Hopefully, folks that have listened, it's beneficial. So, Jamie, we've talked on the podcast before about healthy play, something that I captured from Brene Brown's writing, that, what is a thing that you do where you lose track of time? That's usually an indication of healthy play. I think that ties in pretty well with what Michael's talking about here at the end.
Right. And they can be like individual things. Like for me, it's reading or writing or sitting by a campfire. For you, it's probably mountain bike riding.
Mountain biking or woodworking or working on my tractor or doing something like that is usually a good. And we do things even as a family that can also be restorational. Like
Uno.
We had a 30 to 45 minute one single game of Uno that lasts like 45
one
minutes.
Kid came up with a new rule and said, let's do this. We were, okay, let's do it. That sounds like fun. Nope.
And if you'd told me, hey, this game's going to last 45 minutes, I would have noped out of that so quickly and been like, let's do something else. I'm not going to do
But
this.
I haven't seen those kids laugh that hard
we had
in
a blast.
while.
It was a lot of fun. So finding things that are healthy like that to keep things in balance for you, that's kind of my challenge for you. My call to action for you this week is, what are those? And we're going to be out on posting some things on social media about this. I appreciate your interaction to get out there and let us know what's healthy play look like for you. Folks, thanks for listening to this week. Hope it was helpful, impactful for you. Have a great week, and we'll catch you next time.